Okay, this is Josh again. Let's do some of these problems here. We're still factoring trinomials, and there's 3 things that we have to be careful with on all of these. The first thing is, when we're working on these problems, we have to look at them and say to ourselves, well, is there just a quick solution that I can come up with and factor them and be done? Okay, I guess that's not too hard to do. The next thing is that some of these problems, now that you're getting better at it, are just going to be unsolvable. And when that happens, we call the problem prime. So rather than saying no solution or can't be solved, they'd want you to write out the word prime. And we have an example of that we'll do. And the third thing that we need to be careful of now is because the problems are getting bigger, they're going to give you more different chances to make a mistake. And one of the common things is when you get some of these problems, let me just make one here, 2x to the third plus like 4x squared plus 8x. Sorry, that's pretty bad. What we want to do is before we start working on this guy and coming up with our answers, a lot of books will say factor completely, which I feel like is better terminology than just factor the trinomial. And the reason I like factor completely is I'm hoping that says to the student, oh, first I got to see, is there anything that I can equally or evenly pull out of all 3 parts before I start doing all this crazy math? And the answer in this one is yes. All of these guys are divisible by 2, so I can pull out a 2. And then, this guy's starting to die, then I can say, okay, is there an amount of x's I can pull out? Yes. Now I can rewrite the problem. And so this would be an x squared, that would be a 2x, and that would be a 4. And so with that part, if I went a little too fast, just know all I'm doing is looking at this guy saying, well, if this times this gets me to this, what would I need in this space right here? And then I just did that for all 3 of them. So if you want, as always, pause the video, just double back and check and see how I did it, and then keep on going. All right. When it comes to these problems here, if you want, like I just said, maybe just pause the video, write a couple of them down, try them, see if you can do these things, and then be on your way. The first one here is 7x squared plus 29x plus 4. All right. I got numbers in the front and back, so now things get a little bit different. And I want to talk about 2 different ways to solve these so that you aren't stuck with one method. But I'm going to do the book method through most of them just to kind of show you how their thinking is and what they want you to do. We know that the front is a 7 and the back is a 4. And so what they encourage you to do is, if you don't just know the answer, is to multiply these 2 together and then work with factors of that. Well, what makes a 28? Well, I have 7 and 4, obviously, because that's that. I have 28 and 1. I have, let's see here, I have 2 and 14. And is it divisible by 3? No, I don't think so. That might be it. But as I'm doing these, I'm looking for which ones, when I combine them, are going to give me that answer in the middle. And it turns out it's going to be that guy. So from here, I rewrite the problem. I rewrite it in a certain way, though, and this is where things get a little bit different. I use the first part and just rewrite it, 7x squared. Now I have these 2 values that I'm going to attach x's to, as if I had like foiled it and come up with 2 answers that are going to equal a 29. Now before I do that, let me just remind myself I had my whole like plus minus chart up here for some of these problems. This situation has a plus in the back and a plus in the middle. So I know that both of these things are going to be added together. And I know that I have a positive 4 in the back. And so I'm just going to rewrite that guy as well. Now I need to plug in these 2 numbers in a certain way. And this is where the book, gets a little bit tricky, but we'll talk about a different way of solving it as well. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to put the 1x here, and I'm going to put the 28x here, right? I'm just going to take these 2 numbers, and I'm going to plug them in and just keep on going. So now I look at these guys as, because I have 4, I look at them and I group them. And now I work on them separately. What's the biggest thing I can pull out of this front part here? X. And then what's left? 7x plus 1. Again, if I'm going too fast, that's mainly just because I'm doing this, you know, I want to make sure I get through all these problems, but by all means, stop the video. Just look at what I did and make sure you understand. I pulled out an X out of both parts, and then I rewrote what was left. Now I have an adding situation, so I know that's plus. What's the biggest number I can pull out of both? 4. What's left? 7x plus 1. And like I've said before, this is where your math facts come into play. So they're so critical, because if you can, the faster you know just what makes what, it's going to save you time. You can use a calculator, but it's a lot faster and more efficient if you just know your math facts up to your 13s. And you're off for a while now, so maybe that's something you want to challenge yourself to just do. So now that I've grouped these guys, I can now join this and this and get x plus 4. And my other part is 7x plus 1. Done. Okay. The other way we can do this is, let me see here. I think I got enough space right here. Is I have 7x squared plus 29x plus 4. You can write out all your factors on the front and the back. 4 is a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 2. The factors here are 7 and 1, and that's it. So I rewrite my problem, or my binomials here. I know they're both plus, so I can fill that in. I know my factors in the front are 7 and 1, because that's all I have that can make a 7. And now I'm working on the back numbers. And so I just start trying them all, but I remind myself that eventually I'm going to want to check this somehow, and I'm going to want to have to combine the O and the I, right? The outside amount and the inside amount in order to get myself back to that initial problem. And so this is just a different method of doing the problems. For some people, they really like this because it's like a puzzle that you're trying to just plug stuff in and see which one works, and then boom, you get it, done. So let's try 2 and 2, because I don't know which one works. So I put a 2 here and a 2 here. 7 times, okay, first is going to get me the 7x squared, right? That we know that. Outside is going to get me a 14x. Inside is going to get me a 2x. Is this going to add up to make a 29? No. So therefore, this is not going to work. Let me just erase these guys. Now, let me try 4 and 1. Let's see here. I'll put a 4 here and a 1 here. 7 times 1 is 7x. 4 times 1x is 4x. Is 7x's plus 4x's going to give me 29x's? No. Now, this is where don't get discouraged. Just remind yourself, these numbers can be interchanged. You can mix and match and put them in different places to come up with an answer. So let's try it. I'm going to put the 1 here and the 4 here, right? I got those two numbers because they're factors of a 4. 7x times 4 is 28x. 1 times 1x is 1x. Do these two add together to make a 29? Yes. I prefer this method. The book is going to teach them this way, but I wanted to discuss this method as well. It's a little bit more guessing because you'll have factors on this side and on this side, and you kind of mix and match them to figure out what pieces of the puzzle you need. But for me, that was more fun than grouping them. And the reason is because when it comes to this grouping, you do have to make sure you put the right numbers in the right places here. So that way, when you group it and then break them apart, you end up with the same thing here. Because let's say I put the 1x back here and the 28 in the front, I end up with something weird that isn't going to work when I end up going to finish this problem. And so that's where I feel like this system is not as good. But at the same time, I guess you could argue, well, this way, Josh, you got all these sets of values possibly, and you're just plugging them in and seeing which one works. I guess it's tomato, tomato. And at the end of the day, whatever method works for you, I say go for it. Okay, so let me erase all these. I hope you guys are still doing okay. You're safe. You're having, some time to kind of get through all this math, but also have time to, take care of neighbors, friends. If there's anybody you needed to help or do anything, that's awesome. The other day I was really bored, and I was actually so bored I started talking to a spider. And guess what it turns out? Or I should say it turns out he's a web designer. Okay, I guess that one maybe didn't go over so well. But you never know, right? Some of you guys have sent me some pretty funny jokes, and so I want to start getting those into the show as well. Let's see here. Moving right along. 3x squared plus 15x plus 18. Now, I will say, when you tell jokes and nobody laughs, because I'm just sitting in my home office here, it's a lot like class, right? Because, I tell jokes in class almost daily, and there's a lot of times I say it, and all I hear are crickets. Or not even crickets, man. I don't hear nothing. But you know what? If you're cracking a smile, if you're at least having a somewhat reasonably okay time with these, then that's great. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Moving on to this guy here, I got a problem where before I start working on it, I got to look at it. Is there anything I can pull equally out of all three parts? Hopefully, again, because you've been practicing them math facts, the answer is yes. I can pull a 3 out of all three parts because these are all divisible by 3s. What's left? I got x squared, I got a 5x, and I got a 6. From there, now I can move on to just breaking this guy apart. Because there's no number in the front, I know that this one is just going to be pretty straightforward. Because it's plus plus, I know that this has to be plus plus. And again, if that doesn't make sense, go back to the previous video. Remind yourselves, write the chart out. What's going to give me a plus in the back? What's going to give me a minus in the middle? And now I have a 6 here. What numbers make a 6? 6 and 1, 2 and 3, and I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, 3 comes down. And what two numbers when combined make a 5? Well, 2 plus 3 makes a 5, but 6 minus 1 makes a 5. The reason I can't use 6 minus 1, though, is because these both have to be addition, because in the back it's addition, and in the middle it's addition as well. And so I'm just going to plug in my 2 and my 3. It doesn't matter where they go. Boom, done. That's my answer. I'm circling them so that the teacher knows exactly what I got. And you are done. All right. Let's move on to the next guy here. Speaking of jokes, well, I guess we weren't really talking about them, but I guess I can throw in another one. Let me write out this problem here. We got 3x squared minus 17x plus 20. Okay. As I was doing all this, I'm like looking for other things that I can do to kind of get you guys engaged with this. And so I was thinking about I was doing some Mad Libs, and I was thinking about words that are easy to spell. And, I've often heard from people that the word icy is the easiest word in the book or in the dictionary to spell. And looking at it now, I see why. Okay, maybe that one wasn't as good. I don't know. Again, tell me what you think. If these aren't making you laugh, then maybe those people were 10 minutes from now, you're like, oh, I get it now. I see why. Oh, that was great. Good job, Josh. Maybe you're just one of those kinds of people. But if not, whatever. Okay, moving on back to this crazy difficult math that we're going to bust through together. Same situation here. Can I pull anything evenly or equally out of all three parts with this guy? No. So the book teaches us this method. Multiply the front and back together. I get a 60. Now the middle is a negative and the back is a positive. So that tells me something. Okay. And we've done enough of these now that hopefully you remind yourself that in this situation, I'm going to be dealing with a negative to give me a positive. Because that's what's going to give me a negative in the middle. And it's going to give me a positive in the back, right? Because the negative times the negative will give me a positive answer, or a positive 20. All right. So I'm working with 3x and 20. And let's see here. What numbers can I use to make a 60 here? I can do -2, -30. And I'm writing in the negatives already because I know that this guy's a negative, and I know that my problem is going to have a negative. I could do -3, -20. That might be promising because that'll, well, not really, I guess, because it doesn't make a -17. I could do, let's see here, -4 and -15. No, that's not going to give me a 17. So sometimes you just got to keep on going. And this is where just practice with your calculator to get those values. And -5 and -5 times something gets me a 60, -12. Oh, now it looks like I'm in business because -5 and -12 give me a -17. The front part here, I'm just going to rewrite. The back part here, just going to rewrite. And now I got the two middle terms. And the book just says group them based on your ability to factor them. And it is a little tricky when one of these is a 1, because then you're like, well, the 1 could go with either part. So I guess in theory, you would just have to try them both, you know, put the 1 here and the other one here, and then see if it works, and then maybe do it the other way as well. It's not clean, but it's going to work. And so now I got to group these in a way so that I can factor them, because it doesn't matter which one I put here and here, because when I go to combine them, I know a -5 and a -12 will give me a -17. So I want to group them by something so that I can factor the front and factor the back. Remember, I'm going to group them like we have the other problems. So what can I use with a 3? Is 3 divisible, or one of these divisible by 3? Yeah, the 12 is. And it just so turns out that 5 or 20 has a factor of 5 in it as well, or you can factor out a 5, however you want to say it. And so that's where you just need to be careful as to like how you put these in what order. If you do it wrong, then just put them in the other spot and then see what happens. So now I'm going to group these guys together and keep on going. What can I pull out of here? A 3 and, oops, let me put an X right there, and an X. And then what's left? X minus 4. All right, moving up to this guy. What can I pull out? A -5. And then what's left? X minus 4, right? Because a negative times a negative gets me a positive. And the reason I pulled out the negative with it was because, well, first of all, it's part of that number, that whatever you want to call it. And then the other part is by taking out a negative, it then gives me these guys which match. And so as you're solving these, start looking for those patterns, because if you see it's not going the right way, then maybe that's where you pause and say, oh, I got to reorder these. This is not going to work. And so now I'm just going to group them and be done. I got 3x minus 5, and I got x minus 4. Okay? The other method that we had where I did it was we just look at our factors here. What makes a 3? 3 and 1. What makes a 20? 5 and 4, 2 and 10, 20 and 1. And now we just start figuring out which one is actually going to work here. I know that my front is going to be 3 and 1 because those are my only factors. I know it's minus minus because I have a plus in the back and a minus in the middle. And now which numbers are going to get me a 17? Well, if I do a 20 and a 1, I could maybe have like some kind of subtraction. But at the end of the day, you just got to start plugging these in and figuring out which one is going to work. And in this situation, if I put a 5 here, if I take that first set, if I put a 5 here and a 4 here, and I FOIL it, I end up with the exact same thing. Like I said, the book is going to have you do it this way. I think it works, but I also think that it's a little tricky just making sure you know what goes where and then continuing. This method is a little bit more of like a guess and solve where you just put the pieces into the puzzle and you just start plugging them all in, multiplying it, foiling it, seeing if it works, and if it doesn't, then go back to the drawing board. Pick which way works for you and practice. The repetition is what's going to really help you get solid with all of this stuff. All right, so let me erase this and move on to the next guy here. This is a lot of work, actually. Again, practice these. Take your time, okay? Don't expect to learn this in 10 seconds. You might need to go over it. You might need to pause the video. 4x squared minus 3x plus 5. Let's see what we got here. Let me make sure I'm following along with the book here. I want to make sure we're doing all the examples here and I get all my factors. Actually, let me just take the book here. Okay, can I pull anything out of all three parts? No. So then now we go on to that next part, which is multiply the front and back and get a 20. All right, what makes a 20? We got and gets me a -3. Well, I guess that means that I have a minus plus, so I know I'm going to have a minus minus situation. Okay, so then now because I know I have a minus minus, what makes a 20? -20 and -1. What's the next one here? -4, -5, -2, -10, and I think at that point I'm good. So once I've broken this down into all the possible factors, because I'm using the books method and I'm looking at, and I already have these as negatives because that's how they would go in here, I can look at them all and say, is there a way for me to combine them to get a 3? -20 and -20, -20 and -1 is a -21. This is a -9. This is a -12. So none of these guys are going to work. And so in a way, this might be a better method because you have them all listed here. And if none of these, when you add them together, equal that number or value in the middle, then you're done. And so this is a situation that we call no solution. Wrong. We call it prime because nothing can be done. Nothing can happen. It's done. All right. Let's move on to that last problem, and I guess we're good for this video. These ones are tricky, okay? You might need to try this more than once. You might need to go back and watch this a couple times because I'm assuming that you're good with those math facts. I'm assuming that you're able to, work on FOIL and factoring and do the basics of this. There's a lot that I'm just kind of assuming at this point that you're able to do. But if it's tricky, just watch it again. There's also in our book, there's those math tutor videos that you can watch as well. Just click on the links. There are other ways to see this, okay? 12x squared plus 69x plus 45. All right. Here's another joke that came in from one of our amazing students. They said, why doesn't Antarctica have any cases of coronavirus? And the answer is because they're so isolated. Get it? Okay. Maybe you don't. I don't know. Get it? Isolated? No? Okay. Okay, anyways. At this point, the numbers are getting really big, so I always go back to the calculator because I'm just not really good with some of this stuff. And if you don't have a calculator or if you can't use it in your class, I would say just do your best. Try to figure out what's the biggest number you can pull out of all three of these parts, okay? So, and that should be the first thing you do, right? You look at the problem and go, is this something where I can pull something out of all three? And the answer for this guy is yes, and that number is 3. So I pull out the 3, and what do I have left? 3 times 4 is 12, and then I need my x squared. 3 to get to that, let's see here. I have a 23 and an x. And the last part here is 45, which is what, 15? 15, yeah. Okay. And now I can start working with this problem. So you can do the book method, which is to multiply 4 times 15, which is 60. And then just start working on what makes a 60. I know it's plus plus, so that's kind of, oops, I guess I don't need that just yet. I know it's plus plus, so I have a 4x plus something plus 15. And what numbers make a 60? Well, I have 60 and 1, I have 30 and 2, I have, what? I have 20 and 3. Again, I'm looking for numbers that when multiplied make a 60, but when added together make a 23. And at this point I can stop because I have my values right there. Now this again is where you need to know, where do they go? Do they go in the front or the back? I know they both have an X. Well, now I look at the problem. I have a 4, so I need one of these numbers to be divisible by 4 most likely, or I need this guy to be able to be manipulated or busted apart with a 15. And again, it just comes down to experience, knowing what works with what. Yes, the 20 would work here because they would both be divisible by 5, but then what would I have up here? I'd have a 4x and a 3x, and I don't know, maybe that would work, maybe that wouldn't, you know. But let's see. I guess we could try both. So I put, let's say, I don't know, let's just try both. Let's say I do 20x here and 3x here. So what can I pull out here? I can pull out a 4x. And what do I end up with here? 1 plus, what would that be, a 5? Well, that looks kind of weird, doesn't it? Because I already pulled out 4x. So that's going to just give me some number value, which, you know, isn't really that helpful. But at the same time, I don't know. Let's take a look. I got 4x's and 20x's. I'm sorry, that's x squared. So that would be an x in the front. And I have an x plus 5. And now let's move on to the next part here. I can pull a 3 out of both of these guys and end up with an x plus 5. So by knowing that this guy and this guy are divisible by a number, that helps. By seeing that 3 is a fact, you know, 3 times something gets me to 15, that helps as well. These guys are common. I group these guys and I get 4x plus 3 and x plus 5. Okay. Using the other method, you would have a 4 here, which is 2 and 2, or 4 and 1. Over here, I'd have 15 and 1, or 3 and 5. It's all being added, so then it's just a matter of writing out these guys and trying 2 and 2, and 3 and 5, and seeing if that works, or trying these two and these two. It's really a guessing game. There's no good way to solve them if you do them that way, but it does work, and some people prefer the puzzle method versus writing them out and then coming up with your answer. Okay? So, good job on these. They are tricky. Take your time. Go slow. Ask me questions if you have some specifics, but I feel like this is a really good review of exactly how you should do them, and we got to cover a couple different kinds of problems. All right, so once again, I'm going to see you in the next video. Keep sending me the jokes. Thanks for your time. I'll be in touch.